When watchers stop just watching, cities become hunting grounds. Salem was never supposed to be part of the Hollow. Until now. Sometimes the line between surveillance and pursuit is so thin, you don't notice when you've already crossed it. Daniel and Ashe thought they were recovering evidence. Instead, they were being marked, led into a city where the Hollow was never supposed to follow. This is unheard evidence. And tonight, Salem itself becomes a battlefield. Daniel had been in enough surveillance counter-drills to know when the watchers stopped just watching. The wind had shifted in the hollow of the valley, carrying the metallic tang of wet pine and the low rumble of the Centime River in its late winter swell. His boots were still slick with mud from the embankment when the sound came, not the ordinary hum of tires over gravel, but the pause. The kind of pause where an engine drops to idle but doesn't cut out. Ashe was already looking at him from the other side of the truck bed. She didn't need to say it. Somebody had stopped on the road above them. The recorder, the second one they recovered, was in Daniel's hands, sealed in a fresh polyethylene bag, labeled with a Sharpie HC02, pull date 03-14-15:19. He'd made sure to note the pull time down to the second on his watch. Chain of custody wasn't a formality here. It was the only way any of this could be admissible if they made it to court. But court felt far away now. They had pulled the device from a fence post half buried in moss just south of where the Hollow's safe trail skirted an abandoned timber spur. The placement was perfect, close enough to a maintenance road for easy drop-off, far enough from any casual hiker to seem like nothing more than part of the fence. Inside, the circuitry was unmistakable, same amateur solder work as the first recorder, but the capacitors were newer. Whoever was running these wasn't just maintaining a network. They were upgrading it. 47.6 seconds. Breathing female, shallow. 53.9 seconds. Background, distant watercourse, metallic impact X1. 1 minute and 12.4 seconds. Whisper, don't let him see me. Unconfirmed female. Tone matched the winter sample at 61%. 1 minute and 15 seconds. Carrier tone spike, 800 Hz, 0.6S. The spike mattered. Daniel had heard it before, in the first Willow Creek recording from 2011. 2 matches in 1 week, Ashe murmured, glancing down at the notepad he'd shoved into her hand. It's not just matches, Daniel said. The carrier tone's identical. Same frequency drift. Which means it's the same transmitter, she finished. From 14 years ago. Daniel didn't nod. He didn't have to. The implication was ugly enough. The road above them creaked with the sound of tires grinding wet gravel. Not moving away. Not moving closer. Just holding. Ashe slid the bag recorder into the padded evidence case in the back of the truck. Daniel watched her close it with both latches, then lock it with a tiny padlock he'd started using after the first F attempt. He kept his voice low. We need to get this to the lab before the rest of the thought could form. The truck's side mirror caught a reflection, silver flash in the tree line. A door. Closing. They went to movement protocols without even speaking. Ashe stayed low, circling toward the driver's side. Daniel moved along the passenger side, staying in the shadow of the cab. The air smelled of oil and wood smoke. Not theirs. The first impact wasn't gunfire. It was heavier, duller, a thrown weight slamming against the bed of the truck. A distraction. The second impact came with splinters. Daniel dropped into a crouch. Somewhere above them, in the cut of the hill, someone was moving fast through underbrush, closing distance. You got your phone? Daniel whispered. No signal here. Ashe said. You? He didn't bother checking. They'd been in a cell-dead zone for the last 3 miles. Rural Oregon wasn't forgiving that way. In terrain like this, you could be standing 20 feet from someone and still vanish from the grid. The Hollow had moved from interference to pursuit. That was a shift. They weren't just watching the recovery operations anymore. They were contesting them. Back at the evidence trailer 2 nights ago, Daniel had run the first recorder's voice sample through the Oregon State Police cold case audio database. The hit had been partial, less than 70%, but enough to flag the Emily Cross 911 call from 2011 as a possible source. Now, with the second recorder in hand, the probability curve was climbing. The spiked tone, the ambient watercourse match, even the background metallic resonance, All pointed to the same transmitter chain, and that transmitter had been in use the night Emily Cross died. The rain started without warning, driven sideways by the wind funneled through the valley. It hit cold against Daniel's face, and in the hiss of it he heard something else, a voice, low and measured, too far to place. Ashe's eyes cut to his. They had to make a choice, stay and risk the evidence, or move and risk being driven into open ground. Daniel tapped the case once, their silent shorthand for priority object. They moved toward the service track, boots punching into soft mud. The first real assault came just before they reached the bend. A figure broke from the tree line, face obscured by a hood and half mask, moving with a kind of speed you didn't get without training. No weapon visible, but the intent was clear. Daniel shifted left, Ashe pivoted right. The figure didn't slow. The impact came low, a shoulder to Ashe's ribs, driving her back into the bank. The case nearly slipped from her grip. Daniel closed the distance, leading with his left hand to push the attacker off balance, right hand going for the arm. The resistance was calculated, enough to stall them, not enough to commit to a full fight. And then the attacker was gone, back into the tree line, steps vanishing into the hiss of the rain. They didn't wait. The track led them to the bend, and from there, down toward the old mill road where Daniel knew they'd get a signal. Only when they reached the rusted gate did Ashe let go of the case to check her side. Her breath was tight, but she shook her head. "They are not trying to take us out," she said. "They are trying to mock us." Daniel didn't like the way that sounded. For what? Ashe's eyes were still scanning the tree line. For later. They didn't make it back to Salem the same way they came in. By the time Daniel and Ashe reached the mill road, the storm had chewed the daylight into gray smaze. They hit a single bar of reception just past mile marker 41, enough to push an encrypted ping through to the safe server. Daniel didn't send text. He sent coordinates, because the Hollow already knew where they were. It wasn't just Ashe's cracked rib or the glancing strike to the case. That would have been noise. No, the marking was cleaner. When they pulled into a rest stop off I-5 2 hours later, Daniel found it, a scrap of adhesive backing clinging to the fender. IF tag. Disposable. The kind used by freight haulers for cross-state tracking. Ashe peeled it off with tweezers, dropped it into a Faraday pouch, and zipped it. "They didn't want the recorder," she said. "They wanted us to lead them home." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "They've shifted zones." "What do you mean?" "They are not content to guard the Hollow anymore. They are moving into populated ground." It started with mirrors. South Commercial Street was half-choked with traffic, brake lights jittering in the drizzle. But every time Daniel checked the rear view, there it was, a gray Tacoma, dented bumper, roof rack, holding back 3 cars but never breaking line of sight. Standard tail etiquette. Not close enough for suspicion, not far enough to lose contact. He drove casual, not too slow, not too fast, one hand loose on the wheel. Ashe had her phone out, running thermal off the small FLIR clip. She aimed it out the rear window under the pretense of scrolling. "Tacoma's hot," she said. "Engine temp's been steady since Turner. That's no coincidence." Daniel nodded once. "They are testing our perimeter." The Hollow wasn't supposed to extend this far. Every profile they had built pegged them as rural guardians, operating within the natural choke points of the valley. Tight canyons, dead radio zones, familiar terrain. Now, Salem side streets became the stage. At the corner of Liberty and Mission, another player entered. Silver minivan, paint flaking, side door stickered over with a youth soccer logo. It slid between them and the Tacoma, then held pace. Ashe caught the reflection of 2 silhouettes, neither looking down at a phone. Both scanning. "Box formation," she murmured. Daniel's pulse jumped. They weren't just tailing. They were corralling. He hadn't called the number in 3 years. He told himself he never would. But as they swung west toward the Capitol Mall, the line between restraint and exposure thinned. He thumbed the burner phone, dialed without hesitation. 2 rings. Then a voice, older, gravel-thick. "Joe, Jesus Christ, where the hell be you been?" "Detective Rourke," Daniel said evenly. "I need a lift. Surveillance tail. 2 vehicles, possible third. Southbound on 12th, approaching ferry." The pause was short, but weighted. Then, "Stay on 12th, don't deviate." You'll see me. The line clicked dead. Ashe's eyebrow lifted. You trust him? No, Daniel said. I trust his habits. 12th was heavy with mid-afternoon traffic. Students crossing between Willamette campus and the mall. A perfect crowd. Perfect cover. That was a danger. Hollow operators could disappear into it. But it was also the one advantage, law enforcement terrain. At Ferry Street, a black sedan with government plates eased from a side lot and cut neatly into the lane ahead of them. Driver's side window rolled halfway down. A flash of a badge, quick, unceremonious. Rourke. The Tacoma shifted lanes behind them, clearly recalibrating. The minivan adjusted to block the opposite flank. Daniel exhaled. They are going to try a choke. Rourke didn't wait for subtlety. The sedan cut hard right into an alley behind a shuttered bookstore. Daniel followed, tires spitting gravel. The Tacoma overshot. The minivan braked, wavered, then peeled down the next street. When Daniel pulled in behind the sedan, Rourke was already out, trench coat dark with rain, .40 holstered but visible. Christ, Joe, he said, striding to the passenger side. You weren't kidding. Ashe climbed out slow, case still in her grip. They tagged us, Daniel said. Disposable IF. They've got Salem ups now. That's escalation. Rourke's jaw tightened. You're telling me Willow Creek didn't burn out in 11. You're telling me it metastasized. Daniel held his stare. I'm telling you we've got audio that ties them directly. And they know we have it. Rourke didn't waste time. He pulled a small black Pelican case from his trunk, popped it open. Inside, 2 handheld scanners, 1 spectrum analyzer. He tossed Daniel the first scanner. Run it, Rourke said. If they've marked you, we'll flush them. You know procedure. Daniel powered it on, swept low band to 6 gigahertz. Noise floor rose. The alley itself was clean. But at 2.44 gigahertz, there it was, pulsing carrier, signal strength surging, then fading. Mobile transmitter. They are still close, Daniel said. Rourke nodded grimly. Then we pull them into control ground. You still remember the drill. Daniel's lips curled faintly. Bait and box. They staged it in Riverfront Park, where the carousel and amphitheater provided both line-of-sight cover and crowd density. Daniel and Ashe took the bench nearest the pavilion, recorder case visible but tethered by cable lock to Ashe's wrist. Rourke hung back 20 yards, blending into the slow Sunday foot traffic. At 16:07, the Tacoma reappeared at the far end of the lot. At 16:12, the silver minivan slid along Water Street. Side door cracked 2 inches. Daniel didn't turn his head. He just murmured, "They're in position." Rourke's voice, low in his earpiece, "Wait for the third." At 16:19, it came, a woman in a reflective vest, clipboard in hand, walking with deliberate casualness toward the bench. Ashe stiffened. Park survey. Fake. Daniel's pulse kicked. The Hollow had adapted. They weren't just in cars anymore. They were in skin. The woman with the vest slowed, as if counting benches. She looked up, eyes meeting Daniel briefly, and in that moment he saw it. Recognition, calculation, and intent. She spoke just loud enough for them to hear. You're carrying something that doesn't belong to you. Rourke moved fast, badge flashing, but the timing was already in play. The Tacoma door opened. The minivan rolled closer. The crowd of joggers and strollers turned into collateral. The Hollow had escalated again. Not just interference, not just pursuit. Direct assault in populated ground. And now Salem itself was a contested zone. The Hollow isn't confined to the woods anymore. It's here, in Salem, among crowds, in plain sight. But if they're escalating into cities, then the question isn't just who's watching. It's who's controlling them. That's where we go next. Until then, subscribe now, stay aware, stay listening, because silence is never empty. This is Unheard Evidence, where the facts speak louder than words.